Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Platitude Era podcast slash YouTube video. Today, we will be talking about Mission Impossible Fallout. Before we start our review and spoiler talk about this movie, we suggest that if you haven't seen this movie, go watch it first and then come back and check out our review slash spoiler talk. So, what did you think about the movie Mission Impossible?
I'm gonna say it was probably one of the better ones. I think for most people, they would probably agree Ghost Protocol is the best one, and I'd say this one is probably a close second. Now it's been a while since I've revisited some of the other ones, but this one I would say so this one got high reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and I was kind of skeptical at first because after watching the trailers, it kind of looked like it was trying to be dark and edgy and gritty, and it didn't look like it was gonna be that much fun. But after watching this, I can easily say that this movie was a ton of fun and a lot of action, a compelling enough story, and probably up there with among my favorite Mission Impossible movies.
I really loved the story as well. It had a lot of suspense, action, and comedy. I don't say this often about movies, but I felt that this was a well crafted story. Just the detail and everything that made up the whole movie, the story was well thought out, well scripted.
I'd say the story is pretty good. It's not like a mind blowing story, but what happens in the movie, it has a few twists, or like it kind of like a little like turn on its head of different conventions for the story. Like it kind of keeps you guessing at different points in the movie, like like the crew's gonna survive and they're gonna accomplish their mission and this, that, and the other thing, but what a good story does is it kind of throws some suspense. Like the team will have some setbacks, but then they'll kind of like they'll be able to succeed in their mission, but like in ways you're not expecting, and that kind of grabs your attention and keeps you interested in the story instead of being like a boring conventional movie as probably some other action movies.
What'd you think of the acting?
Uh, Seemed fine. I mean, everyone played their parts. Simon Pegg was pretty funny. Uh, Tom Cruise is charismatic enough. Henry Cavill, I don't know if I want to say he stole the show, but I mean he kind of brought a lot more to the table than you'd expect. I mean, we haven't seen him in that many movies, just playing Superman in the few Zack Snyder movies, but yeah, he was a compelling enough character. And
Man from Uncle.
who?
Superman played Man from Uncle.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, just I think this is probably one of the best roles he's had. I'm gonna say ever, because I don't know. Nothing about him has grabbed me before as whoa, what a good actor, what a great character he's played. But in this movie, he plays a very interesting character and makes it worthwhile. I guess one of the better characters in the Mission Impossible franchise.
Now, this is funny because I've heard other podcasters and people talk about this, that Henry Cavill is actually a good actor. He just needs to be working with the right director to bring out his talent. And now I believe it. I feel that everybody in this movie, I know we've said this in a previous review where everyone was just reading off the script or just doing their thing, just pretty much sleepwalking through their roles. But I felt like in this one, every actor in the movie put a really good effort into the movie. And when the actors care about the movie that they're working on, the project, then it makes the audience care about it too. And I feel maybe that's why the movie has such a good score on Rotten Tomatoes, why it was the number one movie on the box office over the weekend, and why everyone says that it's really good, just because it was a good story, well acted, well directed as well. What do you think about the directing?
Uh, I think there was a lot of like good cinematography. A lot of the shots looked interesting, and like the camera movement flowed very well. It's not a bore. I mean, this shouldn't be a boring movie, but like what a lot of this movie does well is it shoots the action very well, because a lot of this movie is action. That's kind of the selling point for these movies, is these gigantic action set pieces that like kind of keeps the audience on the edge of their seats. And this is probably some of like the most interesting, most well choreographed action I've seen in one of these movies. I think nothing's ever going to top the Burj Khalifa scene from Ghost Protocol, but this movie has a ton of excellent action that just it kind of knocked my socks off. What Skyscraper failed to do in its boring CG action, this movie goes far and away with, just by having Tom Cruise actually do it, having everything being practical. All of the set pieces in this movie have elevated the playing field for every single action movie that to come before it. Like, I feel like I can't really watch any other action movie unless you have gigantic set pieces like this movie has, and it kind of blows everything out of the water.
I'm glad you brought up the part about how the action was well shot. The action in this movie was so well shot, I completely forgot that there was something called shaky cam and close-ups, like that was made popular in the Bourne Identity movies and duplicated in several other action movies. Just completely wiped out from my memory. Mm-hmm. Now, I have some notes about this movie. So now we're going to get into very, very deep spoiler talk. We're going to spoil the whole movie for you. And before we get into the notes, what's your rating for this movie?
I'll say I give it an 8.5 out of 10. I'd say it's really good. I think I liked it better than Rogue Nation, but not as much as Ghost Protocol. So if I were to like rank all the Mission Impossible movies, I'd probably have it just under Ghost Protocol, but like a very close second.
My rating for this is don't miss it. Take the time, make the effort to watch this movie. This is one movie you do not want to miss.
Probably even worth watching on IMAX. Maybe we need to go back and revisit it on IMAX.
And then make another podcast about it?
Nah, not really. But I mean, like, if you're gonna watch one movie in IMAX, I mean, this might make it worthwhile.
And you beat me to it. I was gonna ask you if this was an IMAX movie.
Probably, yeah. Probably not D-Box, but yeah, go. I think it's worth checking out in IMAX just because there's so many like visually like large imagery. I don't know how to best describe it, but just the way there's like scene shot on, like the helicopter sequence, I bet would look fantastic in IMAX. The Halo jumps sequence would probably look awesome in IMAX. Just a lot of just huge moving set pieces that are probably better improved by being in an immersive IMAX theater.
I agree with you. Now, some of the notes that we have about this movie. First off, this movie had, do you call it a plot twist, a double cross, triple cross? Because it goes back and forth and you really don't know what's going on.
I guess it goes hand in hand with spy movies, is like a plot twist, like the twist or the double cross or what have you, where like this movie does that. But like I guess if you thought about it, it would have made sense because, like, oh, they're teasing this one character and, like, you don't know who this character is. And it seems like this character is a big deal. So it would stand to reason that, spoiler, Henry Cavill winds up being the bad guy in this movie. Just because why not? It's an interesting story. Like, because they kind of tease it in the beginning where he's talking to Angela Bassett. It's like, how many times can you be pushed around by, like, your agency until an agent's had enough? So he was kind of throwing that, like, when they were trying to set up as Ethan Hunt as the bad guy, but you can only do that so many times before, the heads of the agencies catch wise that he's not the bad guy. So it was an interesting plot wise just to have Henry Cavill start off as the good guy who you don't know quite initially what his intentions are. You just see him as like an observer, and then have him wind up being that he was the traitor the whole time.
I think there was a bit of a back and forth backlash between Paramount and Warner Brothers because Warner Brothers needed to do some reshoots with Justice League, and they needed Superman to come back. And Paramount said, okay, he can go back and do his reshoots, but he's got to keep the mustache. But Superman doesn't have a mustache. We didn't shoot him with a mustache in the movie. Don't care. Figure it out. And that was kind of the spoiler. Oh, Superman is coming back and he's going to be in the Justice League. And then somehow, I don't know where, but it was spoiled for me that Henry Cavill was the bad guy. And I know it wasn't in the trailers. I know it was nowhere else. And I just remember watching this movie and I'm like, I know I heard somewhere that Henry Cavill is going to be the bad guy.
Well, I mean, the trailers have it show you that Henry Cavill is against like Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise and his team, but it's not like it's not necessarily that like he's the villain of the movie. It's just like here's another entity, like he's an agent for the CIA, and the CIA doesn't like how the IMF is playing it. So it seems like they're trying to they're trying to reel in Ethan Hunt, not like, oh, this is the villain, he's out to get the nukes, because the trailers just set out the bad guy from Rogue Nation is back in this one, which seems kind of boring, which kind of turned me off in the trailers. Like, oh, the guy from the last one and he wants nukes or whatever. Oh, he wants to blow up the world again. Oh, but then you have Henry Cavill's character come in and start off as the good guy, trying to like, he's working with Ethan Hunt, and that's interesting. But then, you know, towards the end, you have realized that he's pretty much the same villain from Rogue Nation, but, you know, a slightly very different variation of it.
And here's another example of how good Henry Cavill is as an actor. Even though walking in, I heard somewhere that he was the bad guy, his acting was so good. I said, no, I guess I heard wrong. He must be a good guy.
Yeah, you're kind of on his side. Like, he doesn't seem like the bad guy. He's just kind of apprehensive about Tom Cruise, because like the running theme in all of these movies is Tom Cruise, like he doesn't really play by the book. He kind of does his own thing, but he winds up winning in the end. But like all the heads of all the agencies are iffy about that, just because he's kind of a questionable resource to rely upon. But like every time he always comes out on top. He's always the good guy. He's like incorruptible, and it seems iffy. So then putting like always they're just through his methods, just his character's always getting away just by the hair, like the skin of his teeth, and the other agencies are having to react to that, because like Alec Baldwin didn't like that, and in Rogue Nation, Jeremy Renner didn't like that in Ghost Protocol. Henry Cavill doesn't like that in this movie. So like the running theme is, oh, there's always somebody trying to reel in Tom Cruise's character in all these movies, and Tom Cruise ends up like surprising them and continues to be like the pillar of truth and justice, or the paragon in all of these movies.
One of the things I found interesting in this movie was the movie starts off, the first scene in the movie, it's Tom Cruise, it's his wife, and it's the main bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this was maybe some kind of trauma or PTSD that he was having from all those missions that he's had to accomplish, that it's taken its toll on him. But it was a nice way how it was a blend of that with, oh, expect this to happen at the end of the movie.
Yeah, well, I mean that this is too successful a franchise. That can never happen, so don't be a fool. But like I noticed, like, so they have Michelle Monaghan as Tom Cruise's wife in these movies, and they keep like having her like kind of in the distance in this movie, and they bring her in more and more. And what it seems like in these movies is that so they've always had her in these movies, but she's kind of just there. She doesn't really offer anything for the character of Ethan Hunt. So they kind of, what they do in movies is like, oh, they're going to bring someone's character in a lot more than they did before, because their character is going to have more meaning. So it seems like, oh, they gave her a bunch of things to do, so then Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt's character, can move on from her, because in this movie she's married. So like, okay, we'll give her character some finality, a bit of a conclusion, so we can move her on, and then have some other romantic lead be Tom Cruise's counterpart in the future movies, whatever. Michelle Monaghan, you're free. You don't have to do this anymore. Idris Elba, we know you don't want to be in these movies anymore. You can die in Infinity War. Michelle Monaghan, we know you're not really a part of these movies anymore. We'll give you something, and then you can move on. You're free.
I feel bad for having to say this, but in the opening scene, Tom Cruise has a nightmare that a nuke goes off. Tom Cruise turns into dust. I was thinking Avengers Infinity War. I see you're still mad at me because I snapped my finger at the movie theater trying to mimic Thanos.
Yeah, it was annoying.
Come on, I got the reference.
It wasn't really a ref. I mean, you noticed the connection to it, and I'm trying to eat my popcorn, and you're bugging the shit out of me. Leave me alone.
Another thing that I thought about in this movie was that Tom Cruise got hurt a lot.
Well, there's
literally
just in one scene.
Literally, he got hurt while making the movie, as well as his character got hurt a couple times. Not as good a fighter as he's been in the earlier films. Does this look like they're trying to do some kind of transition where he's going to start retiring or take on a limited role?
Well, that's what they attempted to do with Ghost Protocol when they brought in Jeremy Renner. They're like, okay, we'll slowly phase out Tom Cruise and then we'll bring in Jeremy Renner, like just like what they tried to do with The Bourne Legacy, and that apparently didn't work because then Matt Damon came back. But same with this movie. It's like I think they're kind of playing with the fact that Tom Cruise is old because there was a few like moments where like, oh, he can't quite jump the ledge. Oh, he can't quite fight this guy, but he still manages to do it. But they do play with that like, oh, he's getting pretty old and he might not be in this anymore. But the problem with this movie is it made too much money, so he's gonna keep doing this until probably these movies stop making money, or until Tom Cruise is kind of like his body is kind of just exhausted from all of these action set pieces he keeps working on, so he can only do this for so much longer. But I don't know. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Also, I felt that this movie had references to all the previous Mission Impossible movies. At the end of the movie, Tom Cruise is climbing a mountain, and that reminded me of the beginning of Mission Impossible 2, the John Woo directed film.
Yeah, and then he ran a lot, which reminded me of every other Mission Impossible movie. And then he rode a motorcycle, just like in every other Mission Impossible movie. And then he wore sunglasses, like in Mission Impossible 2, but they weren't Oakleys. But yeah,
And I really liked the throwback. This seemed like it was one of those, a take on an old spy movie as well as a TV show, but just updated for today's times. What I really liked was when he received this mysterious package, he opens it up and it's the cassette player, just like in the TV show.
yeah. Because I feel like I guess some people had a problem with Rogue Nation. Is its story? It was kind of meh. This one like feels more. I guess a return to form to more classic spy thrillers. I guess I don't know, the story's more interesting, and even though it's kind of the same story as from the last one, but yeah, it's more interesting, and it does more interesting things with how the story plays out.
And the last thing is, after we were done watching the movie, my mom said, I guess because he's the producer and the star of this movie, he has a lot of work to do, and that's why we don't see him too much out in public as far as tabloid magazines, tabloid TV shows. Do you think that he's heavily involved in this movie, takes up a lot of time, that's why we don't hear too much about him going to award shows or other places where celebrities hang out?
Well, I think the running through line with Tom Cruise is that he's kind of nuts. So he's not a conventional actor. He like the positive and negative about him is that he works really hard on his craft. I mean, I don't think you're ever gonna see him in like another like A Few Good Men anymore. But like he seems to be really focused and dedicated to all these action movies. And like I guess the harder he works, like with the filmmakers on a movie, the better it turns out. I think the sequel to Edge of Tomorrow is coming soon, and that'll, depending on how many years he wants to learn how to fly like a fucking Osprey AC-130, then like sure, I bet it'll be a fantastic movie because he's so devoted to the craft that he's developed for himself. But we'll see. I think he knows what movie he wants to make, and he seems to be working with the filmmakers to do that, and it's kind of showing. It's kind of shows him as an actor that can't really be replaced. To bring it back to your previous point, that like oh, are they gonna phase him out? Well, not really, because Top Gun 2 is coming out. Like he seems to be devoted to doing these kinds of movies and kind of like pushing himself to his limits to see what he's capable of doing, and he continues to raise the bar for himself.
And my mom also asked, why isn't he an Avenger? And she says Avenger kind of as a way to say Marvel movie. Instead of saying Marvel, she says Avengers. Do you think we'll ever see Tom Cruise in a Marvel movie?
Well, so the Fox Disney deal is pretty much at this point done. I don't see any hiccups coming along the way. Maybe there'll be something, but nothing's gonna stop it at this point. So I had a theory. It's possible, but I don't know if Tom Cruise wants to do this. I think he's fine. He's fine doing his own thing. But like, so they could reboot the X-Men, and I don't know where Tom Cruise could fit there. But like, they're probably gonna reboot the Fantastic Four, and I could see a possibility of him playing Reed Richards or something, just like a more older actor could be playing the role of the older scientist, like a Reed Richards. So I could see that being a possibility. But at this point, I don't think he really needs to be in Marvel movies. He might want to. I don't know how deeply he wants to pursue that, but I could see it as a possibility.
I agree with you, and I'm glad you brought that up. Marvel has lots and lots of characters that they could turn into a movie, not only as far as the Marvel brand, but as well as the other studios that control the characters, like you said, 20th Century Fox, Sony, and any other studios that maybe in the 80s and 90s were able to get a hold of some of the characters. And I feel that you're right. Tom Cruise is having a lot of fun right now with the Mission Impossible movies, as well as Top Gun and maybe another Jack Reacher. But I think since so many other celebrities are having fun in the Avengers and a Marvel, I think Tom Cruise we will see him in a Marvel movie. I mean, we did see Robert Redford, Michael Douglas, and who would have thought or guessed that we'd ever see actors like those in a Marvel movie?
Yeah, the Marvel Studios attracts huge talent, so it's not too far a stretch, pun intended, when I say he could be like in the Fantastic Four. Get it? He's short. But I mean, even if he doesn't play that, I'm pretty sure like they could just like Kevin Feige can just scrounge up some obscure character and they can turn it into like a multi-billion-dollar franchise. It's not too far out of reach for Marvel Studios to do that. So ultimately, it's just up to whether or not Tom Cruise wants to be a part of that dynamic or whether he wants to continue to do his own thing.
Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to our podcast on the Anchor app or watching us on YouTube. Thank you very much. And do you have anything to say?
No, I'm good.